Hello and welcome to another update. In this one, we'll be covering the Zaporizhzhia, Donetsk, Bakhmut, Siversk, and Luhansk fronts, as well as a small update in the Sumy region. Starting out in the Zaporizhzhia front, we see that the Russian forces have not successfully captured but are still fighting within the outskirts of Novoanderivka, Novodanilivka, Melituchmachka, as well as Sherbaki and Stepove. The Russian forces have not successfully captured all of these villages. However, in the Stepove area, the Ukrainian forces have been surrounded as there's no road out of this area, so they're unable to retreat from this area and they're unable to receive supplies. So it's only a matter of time until the Russians capture it. And we may see that the main thrust actually went to Sherbaki and Sherbaki rather than Stepove to cut off the road to the north as well as the road to the east. With this, we see that the Russian forces are also attacking the direction of Novoanderivka, where they are focusing on the southern part. However, they haven't captured the northern part, as the Russian forces have not completely taken Sherbaki, but are still fighting at the outskirts of it and are clearing out the buildings. With this, we see that once Sherbaki has been completely captured, they will advance by the highway towards Novoanderivka and flank the Ukrainian positions by Novoanderivka. Because they haven't pushed through Sherbaki and done this, the Ukrainian forces can still send reinforcements from Oryhiv as well as Novopavlivka, so the Ukrainian positions are fairly strong within this area. The same with Novodanilivka and Melituchmachka, as the Ukrainian forces can just continuously send reinforcements to these areas, as the Russian forces have not cut off the roads of supply. So we will have to see from the western side, as this is the one where the Russian forces have seen the most success, and after the fall of the west, that will allow the Russian forces to focus more on the east, and then we will see the Russian forces close in on Oryhiv itself. And then there was also some fighting reported south of Volyaipole. However, this isn't as significant as the ones towards Oryhiv, as they have already captured all the southern villages. However, the east. So the focus will be here on the east, and there's been no updates on this part so far. Moving on to the Donetsk front, it is the usual Vodiane, Pervomaiske, Marinka, and Pobeda are all being attacked as the Russian forces continue their offensive operations in these areas. As for the Bakhmut region, we see that first of all the Russian forces continue their attacks against Predachina, and that is allegedly to cut off the highway between Bakhmut and Konstantinivka. And I think the reason they attack Predachina rather than Ivanivska is because they have mainly fortified Ivanivska, expecting the Russian forces to attack in that direction, but also because cutting off the road here will allow them to cut off the road between Chasiv Yar and Konstantinivka as well, which will give them a larger edge than just cutting off Bakhmut, as Chasiv Yar is the high ground and it will allow them to set up a powerful protective defensive position in the Bakhmut section. And we also see that with the Russian forces cutting off this highway here, it will also have the same level of high ground as Chasiv Yar. We can see that in the topographic map. If we look at the topographic map here, we can see that the Russian forces are advancing from this eastern part around the Klishivka area, right here, and then they are moving throughout the high ground towards the villages to the west. And after capturing these villages, which are situated in the low ground, they'll be able to continue their attacks to the north in the higher ground than Chasiv Yar. We can see Chasiv Yar is in this area, and it's about 244 meters elevated, and this is about 250 meters, so it is fairly the same. So with this, they will be able to attack against Chasiv Yar at a leveled ground rather than Chasiv Yar having the high ground. Also, it allows them to advance towards the city of Konstantinivka, while already holding the high ground, which will give them the advantage when attacking the city itself. So controlling these heights is very significant for the Russian forces, which is why we see them trying to attack in this direction. Now, moving on to the south of Bakhmut, we see that the Russian forces have successfully advanced a fair bit in the Opitna area. We see them capturing the very southern outskirts of Bakhmut, as well as the river line to the east. With this, we can see that they will focus more on the residential area here to the southeast, as well as advancing further into the southern outskirts of Bakhmut in the south. And at the same time, they continue their attacks in the residential area in the east as well as in the northeast, as they try to capture the art winery as well as advance further within the residential area. As for the northeastern part, it was lately reported by Zodiac Mapping that the Russian forces have reached the Bakhmutska River on the whole northeastern area, and the Ukrainian Ministry of Defense reported yesterday and War Council today that the Russian forces have started attacks in the direction of Yahidne, which indicates that they may have crossed the river. They may also mean that they have reached the river, but they may have crossed the river and are attacking to the residential area to the north of Bakhmut, trying to cut off the road here as well. However, most of the front line have now reached the river line. We see that the Krasnogora area is the only part which is to the east of the river, which the Russians haven't captured yet. With the taking of Krasnogora, then there's the eastern part of Bakhmut, but other than that, the Russians will have full control over the east of the river. So most likely they'll be focusing on that for now. As for the northern part of Solidar, we see that the Russian forces continue their attacks in the direction of Rosolivka, and that they have captured Krasnopolivka, as well as attacking in the direction of Vasyukivka. With this, we can see that the Russian forces have managed to capture everything that's east of the river in this area, except for Mykolaivka and Rosolivka, which they are going to be attacking in the direction of Mykolaivka now that they've taken Krasnopolivka, and that they are continuing their attacks in the direction of Rosolivka. And at the same time, they want to cut off the road that supplies Siversk, so they're attacking in the direction of Vasyukivka. As for the Siversk front, we see that the Russian forces continue their attacks in the direction of Verkhnokamianske. And at the same time, we see that the Ukrainian forces have managed to expand their zone of control around Bilohorivka. We can see that they have managed to successfully capture this southeastern outpost, as well as the northeastern part, which is right next to this elevation difference. This is a tiny valley, and then there's this hill to the north, and then there's the Russian positions. Russians still control the hill, however the Ukrainians have pushed them all the way to the river as well as to the hill, controlling this northern section of Bilohorivka, and they also control this outpost area to the southeast of Bilohorivka. As for the Kreminna front, I've decided to split Chernobyl and Plashenka into two because I'm still not sure which report is exactly true. The same with Dubrova, so I'm just going to keep it like this as I'm still not sure and there's no clear indication as to who controls what in this front. But there's still fighting reported within these areas, so most likely they're just contested rather than any side owning it, and the reason both sides say they control it is because of PR. At the same time, the Ukrainian Ministry of Defense reported attacks in the direction of Terny, so I'm assuming that is to the east of it, as the Russian forces would not reach into Terny, while there's still fighting ongoing in Chernobyl. And then finally, the Russian forces tried to recapture Novoselivsk, and there's no report of any progress so far. And then finally, we see that there is a reconnaissance and sabotage group of Russian soldiers spotted in the Sumy region. I'm not exactly sure where in the region it was reported, as there's the border to the very north and then the east next to Kharkiv, but I'm not exactly sure where this was spotted. However, it was spotted within the Sumy region, and this is actually the second sabotage and reconnaissance group that has been spotted. There was one previously in the Belarus area in the Kiev region. So with this, we can see that the Russian forces are actively conducting both sabotage and reconnaissance within Ukraine. And this is very interesting because it is happening in the north and the east, similar to at the start of the war, where the Russian forces attacked both from the Sumy area as well as the Kiev area. And with a lot of rumors going around that the Russian forces are preparing a offensive to the north or the east of the country, or maybe even both, this is an indication that that is possibly true, as the Russian forces are conducting sabotage and reconnaissance operations, and that wouldn't be the case unless they are planning to do some activity in these areas. And as we can see, the front line is hundreds of kilometers away, so there's no reason for them to do so without starting a new front in the northern areas. Anyways, that's going to be all for this video. Thank you all for watching. Hope you all enjoyed and have a great day.